Mouth of Madness, a Datura report by Timmy on Erowid.org in 2004. In high school, I had a friend who had been reading Carlos Castaneda. Carlos wrote about the Yaqui shaman Don Juan Matus, who would access the spirit of the world by ingesting peyote, datura, etc. So he, inspired by Don Juan, went on one of his expeditions to find herbs and came back with a Tupperware full of spiny pods. It would be a huge understatement to say that we were unprepared for the extent of the experience. I ate a heaping tablespoon of fresh, mature seeds. Lucy and Polo had eaten a similar amount. 90% of this was told to me by my best friend Doogie, who witnessed my descent into madness. Basically, what I remember is eating the seeds around midnight with Lucy and Polo. It was kind of like being really drunk, except for the total lack of equilibrium, serious dryness and soreness of the mouth and throat, and some lucid hallucinations. It didn't feel enjoyable, just uncomfortable really. I kept smoking cigarettes that would disappear, and I talked to a friend of mine from day camp who I hadn't seen in maybe 7 years before he disappeared, and I realised he wasn't ever there to begin with. I vaguely remember finding my upstairs toilet had been puked on, not in, with $1 floating on top. I also vaguely remember cleaning it up, washing the dollar bill off, and hanging it to dry. I really wasn't sure if this had happened, and when I went to check it, the dollar was gone and the toilet was a little too clean. Later, Lucy said she vaguely remembered puking in my bathroom, but was still not sure if it was real or not. The dollar is still missing. Polo, Lucy, and I all got extremely fatigued and sleepy, and we all went off to bed. I had a dream where I kept walking into the wall. I was woken up the next morning by the phone ringing. Lucy and Polo were gone. I picked up the phone.
Tim? Tim? Are you okay?
Fine. What's wrong?
What is my name? Tell me my name.
Fuck you, Doogie. Stop fucking with me.
I'm not. What do you remember from last night?
I'm not listening to this.
Just do me a favour and look on top of the fridge.
Ha ha, you put my dog's food dish on top of the fridge. Good one, cockhead.
No, arsehole, you did.
Whatever, goodbye.
I'm coming over.
I go upstairs, where my mum's house is in total disarray. I find the wall-mounted phone hanging off the hook, the front door standing wide open, the table in the entryway overturned, a broken vase on the floor, and it was Halloween, so we had this dish of candy corn. Someone went through maybe 75 pieces of candy corn and bit off only the orange half. I started freaking out. I had really thought that Doogie was just joshing me, but he never took jokes that far. So Dave comes over and helped me clean up. I found all the pieces of the vase broken where they lay, except for a very large section that was hidden behind the curtain on the other side of the room. Strange. After we had cleaned things up, Doogie proceeded to tell me what had happened. He had come back over to my house maybe an hour after I'd gone to bed. Apparently he found me, wearing only my boxers, frantically trying to locate something in my kitchen. Things had not been broken yet. He said my name, but I paid no attention. Only continued to open and slam drawers and cabinets. "Tim!" he shouted. I turned around, looking at him with annoyance. "What? What are you doing?" "I'm looking for my Windows 95 disk." I said this with an expression and tone of voice of someone who had just been asked what his penis was for. I rolled my eyes and walked off towards my dinner table, stopping for a moment to hock a loogie on the wall. Doogie is very confused. "Don't fucking leave," I said, looking at the table. "I'm not," said Doogie. "Not you, the candlesticks." I said this in the same must I always restate the obvious tone. "Tim, what the hell is wrong with you?" "Who are you?" "I'm your best friend." I tried to remember. John. No. Jake? No! You don't even know anybody named Jake. I'm Doogie, what the fuck? Oh yeah, Doogie. I spit another substantial hocker on the wallpaper. "Tim, this is your house. Have some respect. Stop spitting on the walls." "Okay." I spit on the floor. "What the fuck, Tim?" "Hey, at least I didn't spit on the wall." I grab a spoon off the table and seem to be trying to smoke it. I make as if I'm lighting it with an invisible lighter and take a deep breath. "Here." I offered David the spoon. "No thanks." He takes the spoon away from me. I walked away and grabbed my dog's food bowl and went downstairs. Down to my fridge, where I carefully placed the dish on top. She doesn't need it, and I don't like her anyway, I said, either anticipating his question or maybe just talking to myself. I opened my fridge and began digging into the pockets of my boxes, except they didn't have pockets. I'm so thirsty, I don't think I have any change. I look at Doogie. You don't need change. This is your house. That's your pop. Okay, do you have 50 cents? Sure. He reaches in and pulls out a brisk iced tea and opens it for me. I take a single sip, set it down, pull out a fresh can, open it, take a single sip, set it down, reach for another. Doogie stops me. You've lost your mind, you realise, says Doogie. I cackle manically and spit on the fridge. I walk towards my bedroom, missing the doorway and walking squarely into the wall. David helps me. Apparently Polo and Lucy had already left. Where did Lucy go, Tim? She went to see the shadow people. Not long after this, I think, Doogie managed to get me into bed and go to sleep. Then he went home. It was a school night. I'm not sure if I got back up and did those things upstairs, or if Polo and Lucy came back and did them. I guess I'll never know for certain. Lucy woke up in her bed, legs and feet muddy and scraped, with no recollection of how she got there. Polo woke up at home too. These people didn't drive, and they didn't live close to me either. Odd. I'm probably forgetting parts. I've heard Doogie tell this story so many times, but I'm pretty sure I did other stuff too. The story gained something of a legendary status at my high school. Highlights from some of my other friends' stories. Giuseppe ate some, put on Working Man's Dead, and proceeded to talk to Jerry Garcia all night long via his radio. Schloppy, sitting shotgun in a moving car, saw a dark man with a Tommy gun sitting in the back seat. He bailed from the car. June Bug ate some before his family dinner. He was in my friend Odell's basement smoking a bong. When he passed it, the basement and all the other people disappeared, and he was sitting at his dining room table, arm outstretched, while his family stared at him. He had to excuse himself from the table to lock himself in his bedroom. Other drugs you eat, and you're like, hey, that's trippy. On Jimson weed, you're like, hey, that's normal. You never know that you're hallucinating. It's just like a waking dream. Not recommended, unless you're a shaman. Disturbed Reality. A Datura report by Entropy on Erowid.org in 2016. Not recommended at all. Back when I was young, impressionable, and absolutely hooked on psychedelics, I was given the opportunity to try some Datura that a friend had picked from who knows where. He and I diced and boiled several of the spiky pods and ate a handful of red and black seeds. I distinctly remember my pupils dilating and my vision becoming extraordinarily blurry for several days. But that was about it for both of us. No feelings of euphoria or any kind of high. Just a bland experience and bad taste in my mouth from the tea. We chalked it up to overblown accounts of tripping and exaggerated stories. I'd later find out that we couldn't have been more wrong. Fast forward a few weeks, and my wife, then my girlfriend, and I were at my parents' house, looking to pass some time on a Saturday evening. I remember that I still had a few Datura pods in the freezer that I kept from my previous experience and asked my wife if she wanted to try them. I told her of my experience and that I felt it more a benign experience than anything, not expecting her to get any more than a buzz from it. She agreed, and we boiled up another pot of tea in my parents' kitchen. I even offered my mother some, who has never been a recreational drug user, because I figured the stuff was literally harmless. I'd later find out that it affects people differently, and was very glad my mother opted not to try it. About an hour after my wife drank her tea, she started getting mightily fidgety and was unable to sit still at all. We were trying to watch a movie, but she'd keep jumping up, stretching, and wandering in and out of the room. She did this several times, and would come back and sit down again. Then she left the movie room for about 20 minutes and wandered into our living room, where I could hear her talking and laughing. I walked upstairs and found her standing in a dark room, giggling, with her hand to the side of her face. I asked what she was doing, and she said she was chatting with a friend. She had no phone in her hand, just an empty palm. Yet she was having what seemed like a legitimate conversation with someone who wasn't there. I was dumbfounded, as this was similar to reports that I'd read of people experiencing it on Datura. I'd taken probably 4 times more than she did when I tried it, plus ate the seeds, and got off nothing like this. I probed her a little bit, and she swore that she was not tripping, or even feeling euphoric. She genuinely thought she was sober. I was curious if maybe it was a placebo effect, and it was all in her mind. I realised she wasn't when she started chasing my family's black and white cat around the house, giggling, and saying, "Come here, you fluffy little penguin." She asked when my family bought a pet penguin, with a dead seriousness in her eye. And that's when I realised that her pupils were the size of dinner plates. I knew she was tripping hard. She also started getting a little hysterical and noisy at this point, so I figured I needed to work on calming her down a bit. This was about 2 to 3 hours after ingestion. We were outside and smoked a bowl of some high-grade cannabis that I had, hoping this might calm her down a bit. It didn't have any effect. Another hour or so went by, and she was still fidgety and talking about absolute nonsense. I managed to get her to eat something and got her in the shower, still trying to calm her down. This seemed to work, or so I thought, as she finally started to relax and settle down. We managed to finish a movie, and she was starting to get lethargic. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. We were both living with parents at the time, and she would need to go back to her parents' house. I wanted to be sure she wasn't going to freak out, and she reassured me that she was fine and just wanted to go to sleep. She had finally stopped talking to imaginary objects, so I took her home, thinking little else of it. About 7 a.m. the next morning, I'm awoken by a call from her mother, demanding to know what in the expletive I gave her daughter. Still a bit groggy, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or actually on the phone. Then she told me that she was at the hospital with my wife, and the doctors needed to know what she was on. I came to my senses real quick at that point and started to freak out a bit. I explained what I gave her and then headed straight to the hospital. When I arrived, she had just finished drinking a charcoal Slurpee, as she described it, and she said she wanted her money back because of how horrible it tasted. She still didn't realise she was in a hospital, being treated for a potential drug overdose. I was pulled aside by her mother and an attending physician and asked about the previous night. I didn't hide anything and told them that I seriously thought it was harmless based on my own experience with it and its legality. Her mother explained that she tried to get in her dad's truck at about 5:30 in the morning to go grocery shopping and got visibly agitated when told she needed to come back inside. Luckily, she didn't have the keys because I have no doubt that she'd have killed herself or someone else if she'd have managed to get out of her driveway. I could hear her talking again, and knowing nobody was in the room with her, went in and tried talking to her. She said she was talking to a new nurse who hid behind the trash can once I came in the room. The trash can was about 3 feet tall. I couldn't believe she was still tripping this hard, but here we were. Other absurd things were said between the hospital visit and when she finally sobered up, but I've gotten most of the point across. This was many years ago, before information was so readily available on the internet. Had I known that these reactions were even possible, I never would have given it to her. That was her first and last experience with a hallucinogen. I absolutely would not recommend anyone using this. It seems that either it will have a negligible effect on a person, or it will completely make them lose their mind for a day or two. Very little recreational value in my eyes. I'm not a recreational drug user anymore, but even I know that there are many other psychedelics out there that are enjoyable and worth trying at least once. Datura isn't one of them. Strong trip, but long-lasting after effects. A Datura report by Reformed on erowid.org in 2004. A friend of mine, who turned me on to all psychedelic experiences, had been researching Datura and had just recently, a few days prior, found some plants growing on the Canadian River in central Oklahoma. I'm not quite sure what strain this was, but what he had were thick oval pods with soft spikes all around, opened up to reveal small seeds. He invited me to experiment with them, and was very explicit in telling me it was a dangerous beast, and not a lot was known about it. Intriguing. I couldn't resist. The first few times we tried it, we took a very small dosage, maybe 5 seeds apiece, and felt no effects. A week later, we tried again with a larger dose, 15 seeds apiece. This resulted in blurry vision, small amounts of dizziness, and both of us falling asleep for 2 or 3 hours after ingestion, but no noticeable effects otherwise. It was kind of scary, and we decided to write this one off. Looking back, I don't know why we'd want to try again after that experience, but a month or so later, we ran across another plant in the same area as the first, and grabbed a pod apiece, went home and ate all the seeds. We were careful to meticulously chew the seeds up this time, and it seemed to help. A few hours after ingestion, we both passed out. We did not fall asleep, we passed out. It was involuntary. He awoke before me, don't know how long we were out, and shook me until I was awake. I could not walk. My legs felt strong, but I could not keep my balance. It was as if the weight of my body kept shifting from one side to the other, and I felt very top-heavy. My eyes were also extremely light-sensitive. The sun coming through the blinds in his house looked like solid laser beams. When I closed my eyes, I thought I remembered seeing little men, like the Silver Surfer, but smaller, riding on these laser beams of light coming in through the window. But when I opened my eyes, the vision was gone. My friend later told me that he could not focus on anything, but had no hallucinations. At this point in the trip, I felt a strong urge to be home, so I took off walking. How I managed to get across town on foot in my balance-deprived and semi-delirious state will always be a mystery to me, but I did make it home. By this point, I was hallucinating very heavily, still not able to walk well, but it was not alarming. I was not consciously thinking, it's okay, I'm tripping. Rather, it just seemed natural that the world should appear to me in this form. My roommate came home, and he had been on earlier experiments with Datura, so I told him what was happening. He sat with me for a while, then went to bed. He later said that while he was awake and with me, I was sitting on the couch, staring straight ahead. My eyes would open and close for long periods of time, and I would sometimes mutter unintelligible things under my breath. This is when I started to truly slip into the delusional state. I recall seeing and talking to friends from high school, whom I had not seen in years. I even recall being able to bring more people into the conversation at will. I brought my friend, whom I had started this trip with, over as well, so he could see this. I was having a sort of party with old acquaintances. The conversation was very trivial. How have you been? Remember when we did this or that? And you still with what's her name? Type of stuff. I remember having direct conversations with people, while hearing other people in the background having totally unrelated conversations. Such was the clarity of the hallucination. Sometimes the person I was talking to would just disappear right in front of my eyes, but this seemed natural, as in, oh, they left, and it was totally different from an acid hallucination where I have to remind myself that I'm tripping. The sudden spark of fear, oh my god, I'm losing it, was never present. My roommate was awakened a few times by my talking, and he heard me open the front door numerous times and say, hello, see you later, to people. He said that once he came to check on me, and I was talking so fast that he couldn't understand me, and I was drinking a beer. I don't remember that part. He asked me who I was talking to, and I told him he could see them if he just looked. He said he didn't see anyone, and I told him to close his eyes and try to see them. He went back to bed. I don't remember much else, except for constantly thinking I was smoking non-existent cigarettes. I would think I had one in my hands, even be taking drags off of them, and then my two fingers would touch together, and I'd think I dropped it. I probably spent 3 hours of this trip crawling around on the floor looking for dropped cigarettes. I found out years later that this is a very common appearance on Datura trips. I was drinking a lot of water during the trip, and apparently beer as well, due to an extremely dry mouth and throat. Still, urination was infrequent and very difficult. I later slipped into more of a stupor. The strong hallucinations subsided, and I wanted to do something, but was lacking the motor skills and mental acuity to accomplish much. Music didn't seem to be very enticing. During acid trips, music was usually the cornerstone of the experience for me. I tried to play with a fractal program on my roommate's PC, but had trouble remembering how to use the mouse properly. I tried reading a book, but my eyesight was too far gone to focus on the letters, and my mind was too far gone to comprehend their meaning, even if I could. 12 hours and one long bath later, I started coming back to Earth. To the best of my ability, I figured the active trip lasted around 24 to 30 hours. The next day, I felt very tired, distant, and depressed all day. My vision was very blurry for a week, and not sharp as normal for more than a month after the trip. The mild depression stayed with me for a few months, and eventually led to me taking a cycle of Zoloft. I never suffered depression before or since. The long-lasting after effects had me very worried. For a long time, at least a year after this trip, I would occasionally see something rushing towards me out of the corner of my eye, only to be startled and realise nothing was there. I also had, for many years, a slight speech impediment, occasional trouble getting sentences to start, sort of like a mild form of stuttering. This still happens today from time to time, and I took Datura over 8 years ago. Maybe it's related, and maybe not, but it never happened to me prior to the Datura trip. In summation, it was not what I would call a good trip, but not exceedingly bad either. It was the only drug I have ever taken that provided true, audible, visual, tactile hallucinations, and that was quite an experience to behold. But it was also a spiritually empty trip. Other than remembering the hallucinations, I didn't bring anything back with me, nor did I have the mental acuity to do much soul-searching. I have been taken down to 0 before on acid, but still achieved a positive experience in analysing and rebuilding my psyche. This was different. It was more like I was distracted by amusing hallucinations while some demons attached my psyche to a taffy puller. The work afterwards was more of a repair than a rebuild. I would not recommend this drug to anyone. In short, be careful out there. Thanks a lot for listening to these trip reports. The links to all the original reports will be in the description, and there'll also be a link to my Fiverr if you'd like to hire me for any voiceover work. I've got to say, I think that first report is probably my favourite trip report I've ever read. It was very funny, and I had to cut out a lot of moments when I was laughing when he was spitting on the wall and stuff. And just an absolutely crazy report. I don't think I ever want to do Datura in my life. Anyway, there'll also be a link to a new Discord server I've made for the channel in the description if you've got a Discord account and would like to connect with similar people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.